Read this article by Mimi Swartz, Texas Monthly, to sabotage public education. It's on the cover of Texas Monthly this week.
Look, I absolutely believe it is a way of getting rid of public education and privatizing it. When Kip came around, I'll never forget when Kip started here. My son was at St. James Episcopal, and we were looking at, he was about to go into the first grade. And when we went over there and we were talking to them, I was like, well, I'm going to let them stay. The parents who took their kids out and took them to Kip, a lot of them didn't even last a half a semester, and they pulled their kids out. Because when you're private, as I said, the community schools that are in these communities, they must take all the children who live in the community. They can't opt out. But when you talk about charter schools, they get to pick who can stay and who can go. And if you have a kid who has a disability or a learning issue, all they got to do is put them out. So I'm telling you, this is not about choice for all. This is about profiteering, clear and simple. The teachers don't have to be certified. They're not required to have that at all. And when you're talking about being a certified teacher at HISD, you have to have your state certification. So if it was a guideline that was on even playing fields, I would say yes. But when you're a school voucher choice, you do not have to take any kid that wants to apply. You don't. You get to pick.
Tomorrow, Bill, I'm going to put my parent hat on right now. We sued HISD 5 times, won 3 due process hearings. After each one, HISD was ordered to put in the reforms for my son's education because he was not getting a free and appropriate education for an autistic child.
Yep.
It was a war.
Yep.
And I can't talk about.
But I'm glad you. If you had the right.
It did not work for my family. We would have said, "Hey, give us the money. We will go out," and as we did, and found the appropriate education to get him where he needs to go. Public school does not work for everyone.
Look, I agree with you. My point to you is that in that public school realm, you had a right to sue to what you're required. When it is a voucher or charter school, they don't have to comply with nothing. They can put your kid out because it is a choice. They get to choose the population. HISD, I told you, I taught special ed. They were wrong as hell the way they did special ed students. I saw kids who I knew when we ate lunch should have been in special ed with us, but they didn't have them in special ed with us, and they were abused and mistreated because they had them in the population because they didn't want to teach special ed. They didn't want to be bothered with special ed. That's why they got sued and they lost because they neglected it. I agree. But when you go to charter, your kid, they can put your kid out for any reason they want to. When you get to select the kids that you educate, you absolutely are going to have a better outcome because you pick who gets to stay in your school. But when you have a school based on district and residential, you don't get that choice. So like I said, if the playing field for who got into school was equal, I could roll with you. But the guidelines, you got to be certified at HISD. You ain't got to be certified at a charter at all. Not at all.
But obviously you could put all those requirements in. I mean, it's not.
They're not there, and they haven't been there in the last 20 years. They're not going to put that in there that you got to do that. They're not going to do that.
One of my concerns with this.
Go ahead, Charles.
No, I was going to say, have we seen numbers yet? Have they said specifically what that number is going to be for each child? Because I saw some 10.
10.
I mean
that's what I hear, somewhere around 10. And you think about that. How about a homeschooler in Livingston? She's got 4 kids, and she, instead of going to work at whatever, at the casino or at the chicken plant, she decides to educate her kids. She gets $40,000 to do it. It opens up some options. Yeah, also some options for abuse too. But this isn't like trailblazing. Other states are doing this, right, Bob?
Well, it is. Other states are doing it. It's one of these issues that, as Bill King said, when you've got 80% of the population polling saying that they support this, legislators need to pay attention to that. And I don't think it's, my initial objection was that I was hearing that the rural communities were against it, but apparently it's not the people of the rural communities. It's the school administrators, the contractors that feed off of the school districts, the school board people, the teachers and other employees, unions, or not unions, but employees and those types of things that are against it because they fear the competition. And competition is good for everybody. You know, the schools will get better if they have to compete to keep students. That said, I'm also a big believer in we don't pay property tax and school tax to send my kids to school. We pay our property tax to send everybody's kids to school. If you don't have kids, you still pay the school tax. If your kids are grown, you still pay the school tax. So, you know, to take that money out of the public school system and put it into other things, that's not necessarily a good solution either.
But Charles, I want to ask you this. Hold on, Charles. I want to ask you this. You know, and we ran it last week. Dr. Mark Jones's pretty striking polling last week that we aired, you know, found that the biggest supporter of school choice were urban African American Democrats at nearly 70%. And tomorrow, what tells me is parents want options because they feel like their kids are stuck in potentially failing schools, and there's no do-overs with these kids, none. You know, they get behind, and it changes their lives.
As I said, go Charles, go on.
No, you gotta go. You got.
Okay, look, I understand that, and that's what I just said. I said when you have schools, I didn't want to call any of the names that historically have failed repeatedly because HISD has neglected them. Look, I'm telling you, you have schools and the racism that is going on at HISD between the black and the browns. It's unconscionable that is even going on, and it's been going on for years. And so when you have a school that doesn't get the historically neglected funding, those parents want help because it matters where your kids look. Nobody, not Biden, not Trump, nobody to me has given a damn about what COVID has done to these children. When you miss kindergarten, you miss first grade, you miss second grade, you miss learning how to learn. Then you thrust them back in the classrooms. You got to reprogram them. And some of them were never programmed in the first place. So the school was already doing bad. COVID then kicked it in his ass. And now you got to send your kid back there. And it's just as inefficient as it was before COVID now. But when I see the education of our children as a money grab, what's the true mission?
Well, then it gets down to, you know, in Bill King, let's follow the money. I mean, the COVID catch-up dollars that were granted to the state of Texas and passed to the ISDs as fully discretionary, billions and billions of dollars. You know, is this really just a battle over who can get the biggest pile of money? And the ISDs are just defending their pile?
Absolutely. Let me just,
how do you explain the polling? How do you explain Sergio, there's a super majority of Latinos, there's a super majority of African Americans, there's a super majority of Republicans. The only group that doesn't agree with this is about half of white Democrats. Half white Democrats agree with that. I don't see how you can say that we're just going to ignore what a super majority of people want. That's what these two parties do all the time. I mean, this is one time where they're actually now. Look, I'm worried about the implementation of it, and all that for all the reasons y'all all talked about. But look, at the end of the day, every system that has competition gets better. Now, that is an absolute truism. And we do not have any competition in this system right now. Public education has a monopoly. I'll tell you a story. When I was, this is like maybe 1985 or 6 or something like that. I walked in the house one afternoon and our housekeeper was sitting at the table and she was crying, African American. And I said, "What's wrong?" And she said, "My little boy goes to, I don't know, it's one of those god awful junior highs out there. And he'd gotten beat up because he wouldn't join a gang. And she says, I've got to get him out of there, but I don't know what to do. I don't have any money to put him in a private school. I'm stuck there. You know, what do I do?" You know, and I just think that's why you see 75% of African Americans supporting this. It's interesting that poll, if you look at it, they ask it for low income families and then for everybody. And the polling for low-income housing, for low-income families, was actually quite a bit higher than it was for everybody. I think that's something we ought to think about in this. But I don't know. Listen, I'm a free market guy, and I believe in competition. I just don't see why we can't have a managed competition to see who can do the best job.
So
But
I'm in favor.
hold on, hold on. Sergio Lita has actually served on HISD board. Is that correct, Dr. Lita?
That's right. And also spent 30 years in public education, both at the elementary level and secondary level. A couple of things. Back to the original point, a couple of questions, Greg. Yeah, special ed department and HISD is a mess. They're overworked, understaffed, and not enough resources, undoubtedly. And the issue of the COVID money, that money was funneled to the strongest groups, the special interest groups. The union pushed very hard. They gave teachers the highest raise ever, 11% raise too. And not only retention and recruitment stipends. So a lot of the—
And they're asking for more.
Yeah, and they're always asking for more, and always asking for more. But the narrative this is marketing. The school choice, charter school, they're very sophisticated on marketing, getting the message out of failing schools. But if you look at the cup half empty as opposed to half full, you have a whole different perspective. Me being from the inside, I can see it on the outside. HISD takes a bad rap, but let me tell you something. They have amazing programs you don't look at. You don't see billboards. You don't see yes preps, HISD, go to college, all that marketing stuff. But they have 40 national blue ribbon school. You know what a national blue ribbon school? That is a low minority school. Minority students above state and national levels on the state academic test. 40, the most in any other state and perhaps in the country. Those things we don't focus on. The exceptional AP programs, IB programs, marching band programs, sports programs. It goes on and on and on. The graduates from the Bakey, HSPBA, Beyonce, it just goes on and on and on. But if we look at a few failing schools, instead of siphoning the funding to another school, you're actually making it worse. Because not only are you, if you're a small, developing, struggling school that's been neglected, instead of putting those resources and turning that school around, which we've done many times before, and focusing on that and saying, hey, let's not just focus on those few schools that are struggling. Let's look at the big picture. And that's what the narrative has been from pro-charter schools, school choice folks, is to focus on those small minority schools, not only the Black community, Latino community as well, where they lack the resource. But you have to fight it from within. You need that strong parental group. And just like you and I will fight for it and say, hey, give us those resources to build our schools, not siphoning those funds already to charter schools or even going to private schools, homeschooling, and magnet schools. That is not the solution. The solution is to build with them. But I hate to say this, the charter school movement, the school choice movement are actually winning because HISD has the extremely poor marketing plan, extremely poor. They're not marketing.
But not only that, Sergio, it's not that the marketing plan is poor. You mentioned DeBakey, which is what used to be right around the corner from me from almost 30 years. You mentioned Carnegie. You mentioned schools like that. Those schools get to choose who goes there.
That's right.
You get to pick the cream of the crop. Hell yeah, your numbers are going to be great because that's how it works. When these people get these vouchers and they get to take their kids wherever, they're not going to accept their kids or they will kick them out once they get the money. And they'll make them stay so long. That is the problem with this. And when you have, as I said, the division, I know what Dutton's mission was when he said if one school failed, because the majority Hispanic board had neglected Wheatley for years. So he was like, okay, this will force them to treat Wheatley right so that Wheatley can be counted in. And the things that was what he was trying to do. That ain't how it worked out because of the racism that exists in the board. And when you're trying to educate, if you really care about the kids, race shouldn't even matter. And that is the problem that I have. You go to this voucher system, Wheatley, Yates, Chavez, other schools like that may end up empty, okay? And the programs there for the dual college credits that HCC offers, that has been so discriminated against at Yates High School. Yates, y'all, Yates. They took cosmetology out. Okay, everybody not going to a 4-year school. Some people, we need plumbers, we need welders, we need all of that. They removed that from Black schools, auto mechanics, all of that. And now Carnegie, which used to be at Jones, and I know you remember that, Sergio. Carnegie was a part of Jones, became its own school, and like none of the kids at Jones could go. So look, I understand why the majority of the people, I get it, that are Black because of what they feel they're left with. And that is no choice. They don't have cards. They got to take their kids to the schools that's in their community. Child said this last week. You got 4 kids and they go to different schools. You ain't got time to be searching for a school. I think that they need to focus on making the schools that are there better. And you have the charter school choice. You do have the law enforcement. You have all of those choices. But if your child is not a part of that higher achievement population, what do you do? Right now, you are just stuck.
So to follow up on Tamar said, Tamar, three things really quick. And I'm in favor of school choice and in favor of legislature passing it this session. But like Tamara said about these parents who are in these schools, it's also important of how you ask the question. If your kid is in a failing campus and has been, and you ask them, you ask the parent, do you want the opportunity to take your kid and put them in whatever school you want? Of course, they're going to say yes, but that doesn't encompass everything else. The same thing for the polling for rural Texans. If you talk to a lot of conservative rural Texans, they are adamantly against school choice because they are terrified that if they get the funding from the state, it will bring in regulation on curricula and it will bring in regulation on textbooks, which is what they do not want. If you ask them, do you want school choice, the opportunity to do whatever you want with your kid? They're going to say yes. But there are a lot of them who are very vocal. They used to be part of Texas Homeschool Coalition. Now they've kind of branched off and done their own thing, who are very vocal about what regulation might come with school choice if it does come. And then the last part is, if it's 10,000, if it's 15,000, that might work for a lot of places in this state, but it's not going to work for everywhere. I just Googled it while we were sitting here talking. The average private school tuition in Houston from a general academic consulting group last year was $22,000. They brought it down to $15,000 this year. If you look at a range, the Chronicle did something before. The cheapest one's Corpus Christi Catholic Academy for $10,000. It goes up to $42,000. So who's actually going to be helping that? Who is it? Like, who's going to be left out of that? Because guess what? If it is 10,000 that you're going to get, and that tuition's 15,000, and you're already broke, you're not finding another 5,000.
Not at all.
I'll tell you who it's going to help. I'll tell you who it's going to help. And you know, it's no secret. My daughter goes to Westbury Christian. It is a very diverse student body. I'd say 50-50, maybe 60-40 on the side of minorities.
Always has been.
And those parents make sacrifices because guess what? The schools they were attending were not working for their kids. And they make sacrifices, you know, and yeah, they do without, but they are at ease because they know their kids are in the right place for them and for their future. And I feel it was incumbent upon me to say that. It's also a perspective I come from. My father was a career public school educator. I've seen it work. I've seen schools that work. Finally, and I'm not going to reveal who this is, but he worked at an extremely high level at HISD. He said, Greg, half the kids we graduate are functionally illiterate. They cannot read on a high school level. And that is a problem. And if without competition, you know, how are we going to solve that? How are we going to solve that? And Bill King, you know, you look at these things, competition, forcing people to say, hey, look, we've got to get this job done. Or we're going to go out of business.
Look, I'm not in education, although a whole lot of my family was. And I did sit on the HISD Foundation board for over 20 years. And in the job I had at Linebarger, you know, we paid a lot of attention to school districts. And I've seen one attempt after another to reform the system. I remember when they came in with Rod Page and Paula Arnold and all of those people back in the 90s. And, you know, there was going to be this big push to reform it. And it just never gets any better. It just never gets any better. Now, Sergio is right. We absolutely have some of the best high schools in the country in HISD, but we also have some of the worst high schools in the country in HISD, and we have some really awful middle schools in HISD. And I don't know. I just think I don't see anything else that's worked. I'm worried about the implementation. I agree with that 100%. I worry about, people getting left out. But I just, I fundamentally believe in competition. And if Yates High School has to bring up its game, if they start thinking about, well, how do I keep people in this school? Because the parents in that community will have their $10,000. So how am I going to go get those people to stay in this school? I have a hard time seeing why that would be a bad thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's the whole brain drain. Say you have 5 potential national merit scholars at Yates. I think they're sticking around at Yates. They're going to Carnegie. They're going to DeBakey. And their parents are going with them.
I think you might find niche. You mentioned beautician. I don't know, maybe some HISD high school would decide that's what we're really going to specialize in. And you see this in the junior colleges quite a bit because, like, for example, San Jack sort of found the specialty of nurses. And so they train as more nurses than I guess anybody else in the country does right now, at least in Texas. And they've made a name for it. And it's an excellent program and people want to get into it. And it's because they've got to compete with, with the one up north and with HCC and all that. So I don't know. I have a hard time seeing how, again, clearly got to be a lot of thought given to the implementation so that you don't have all these unintended consequences that I think are completely valid concerns. But I just think that, I haven't seen anything really change in HISD in the 30 years I've been watching it.
Final word to say
Nobody votes in the election. I hold on. I've been sitting here.
I'm after you. Okay, Bob.
So, Greg, to confirm what you were saying, I spoke with a university professor at Texas Lutheran in Seguin this week, and she said the students they're getting in now not only can't read, they can't write, they can't construct a sentence, they can't construct a paragraph, they can't express a thought, they don't know how to think, and that's very frightening in the way this process works. School districts not only lack competition, they lack accountability. Teachers don't want accountability. In any business, you measure your employees and what they do and how effective they are. Teachers do not want that, partially because the teachers have the sole impact on what determines the success of their students. They have to rely on parents to help reinforce what they're teaching in the classroom. And parents, quite frankly, are dropping the ball in a massive way. They're not involved in their children's education, not nearly as much as you are. And that's a problem that I don't know how you get that part of it fixed. But the idea of moving people out into other schools, the schools will become competitive and they will find ways. Throwing more money at public school systems is not the solution. We've seen that time and time and time again. You throw more money into it, you don't get any improvement in results. What we need to do is find a new way, and maybe this is the new way.
Final word to Sergio Lira on this topic.
Yeah, two things. Success factors. What is working in HISD? What is the new trend? What are the new schools? The new innovation, as Bill King saying, what is working? I just spoke to a principal from a dual credit school from elementary. It's a K-8 school here it's called Deanda. It's right here in the neighborhood and not far from Hobby Airport. It's successful. They have projected over 50% attendance rate. This program, dual language program, is the key to success. You have to build from within. Second thing, State Rep Dutton, his 1848 bill that they passed with the Republican majority and all that kind of stuff to wipe out the board because of one failing school, which is Wheatley, which has been struggling. The key to a school being successful is the principal, the leadership. I have been at schools that were in dire straits, and with a strong principal, a strong team, we were being able to turn around not only one school but several schools. It's an issue. It's just like, why are you going to wipe out the whole city council because we have a problem in one neighborhood due to crime? There's a crime that's been neglected for so long. So let's just go ahead and wipe out all the city councilmen that were elected. The same logic, it doesn't work. It's just a personal vendetta by State Rep Hutton, and it's got to look at the big picture. Change the anyway,
all right, Sergio, you're wrong, because let me tell you, Wheatley has been neglected. When you can't even get your football players or your basketball players to even wash their uniforms because the board won't even allow them to get washing machines for 3 years, and the church across the street got to wash them because the board is making sure they're taking their resources. I know a extremely successful basketball coach used to be in Austin, but the principal came in and said, no, we're not doing basketball, we're not doing football, we're going to only do soccer and baseball and got all those kids out of there. And if you have a good principal, but you don't have the resources that you need to educate and make the kids feel welcome, it's not going to work. But because you have a majority Hispanic board in HISD, they are definitely not doing it right.
Okay, hey,
Well,
I want to
take off. I'm going to take off. I'm about to have another coughing attack here you don't want to see.
That's your heart. Did you
All
get
right,
the
see you
Father
later.
John? Did you get the Father John? I told you.
I couldn't find it.
Okay,
There it was.
you're gonna miss our discussion. I was gonna go to your. Can you briefly? Are you okay? I wanted to talk about your column on the statewide crime numbers.
Yeah, I looked there. The DPS has this great new reporting system, data going way back into the 80s on it. If you Google DPS index crime report, you can bring it up and you can run the report in all sorts of different ways. It's really fascinating data. It's the best by light years of what they used to have available. And it's updated monthly, which is also something quite interesting. And you know what it shows, I've been looking at crime stats for 30 plus years, and almost everything the public thinks about it's wrong, and it's so driven by the news coverage, which is wanting to report the most sensationalized stuff. And, so for example, there's no question there's a spike in crime, in murders, at least, over the last 2 years. It came down a little bit in 2022, but it's way above what the level was, say, a decade ago. But there's other crimes like burglary and robbery that actually been going down for decades and continue to go down during that same period of time. And then you've got theft is going way up. So it's, I think crime is a big, complicated, dynamic system, if you will. And I think we try to find simple, easy solutions to what's going wrong with it. And I think those are just sort of, it's such a complex system. It defies any sort of, reduction to a very simple premise about why it goes up or down.
All right. I wanted to bring up one other topic. Bill, if you need to excuse yourself, go ahead. Lots of talk about some very, very valuable airport concessions and the battle of a longtime vendor. The Pappas family looks like they're out. They're out at Houston Hobby. Tamara, you're in the middle of it. What's going on?
Airport concession contracts have been around for years. They became around, I guess, during Lee Brown's time. They included a diverse package to them, and the bidding became more competitive. Pappas won this contract in 2002 against CA1. And the amazing thing is when they won, the arguments that CA1 used to say why Pappas shouldn't get it are the arguments that Pappas is using now. Now, many of you all may not understand, but I remember going to the hearings. I remember the popcorn vendor crying. The little cart that's out there that you just get your box of popcorn and go. This was in 2002. They made $3 million a year. Nobody could have told me they made that kind of money. I wouldn't have believed it. They made $3 million a year. These are very lucrative contracts that people fight for. Pappas has had this contract at Hobby. They also, as you all know, they're in Intercontinental, but they've had this contract for 20 years. When Pappas got this contract, Pappas was in Texas. Through this contract, which is worth an estimated for the time they've been out there over $1 billion. They are now countrywide. They're Chicago. They're out of there. They have grown massively. Now you have Killins, Three Brothers Bakery. You have all these smaller places. The same bidding process that allowed Pappas to win over 20 years. Sometimes they didn't even rebid the contract. They just gave it to them again. Now they're trying to say, "Oh, I lost. It's crooked. I can't win." Da da da. No, this is what you survived. You're still at Intercontinental. You have used this system to profit. Now you're saying it's wrong, and you're talking about out of towners. Killins is in Pearland and Houston. They are not out of towners. Lucille's is on Benz. Pastor Rudy Rasmus through coffee, through Good Coffee. That's Houston. Three Brothers Bakery was here before Papa Do's. How are you going to call these people out of towners? I only spoke one time before about a airport concession contract years ago. I don't really get in this, but this is so egregious. You have made money out there for 20 years. It helped you become a national company. Why the same way you won? These people, you didn't win this time because the profits and everything that Papas have, you got to remember, they're based on over 10 years of numbers. Those numbers are different. This was the more lucrative contract for the city. And I mean, no, I don't know the Killers people. I know that I wave at the Three Brothers Bakery when I go get my black and white cookies, but I don't know them, but I know they've been around. So how you gonna say this is wrong because you lost when it's the system that put you in there, and you're still in you're still in IAH, and you didn't, your contract, you're not being evicted. Their contract expired during COVID. The city couldn't do the rebid because it wasn't fair to do it during COVID. So they gave them a month to month and let them stay on month to month. So they're not being evicted. Their contract been expired, but they're painting this out as if they're the victims. This is ludicrous. And they're talking about 400 people will lose their jobs. Let me tell y'all, they're not going to be unemployed one day because airports are federal sites. You must pass federal background checks in order to be there. Those are very valuable workers, and they make good money out there. And the new restaurants will have to hire them as well. And I don't know when Papa started worrying about people losing their jobs because they closed them Lubies and ain't look back, and they closed the Papa Do's and the Papas and they look back. This is where I have to say what Bill King said is right. Why should one company be able to monopolize both airports? We only have the big two airports. That's it. I think a 20-year hitch is a hell of a hitch. You can't even stay in an office 20 years and they've been making money. It's time for others to be given that change. And one thing about it, you know, I forgot about this, but somebody reminded me, Papas don't have the best history going back years ago with some of the minority community because they had an unwritten rule that they didn't hire them for their wait staff for years. And so they had gotten calls from LULAC and NAACP about changing up their wait staff. They did diversify, but those waiters had to only work in the back of the restaurant. Then in the 2000s, they got on them about managers and they had to bring in managers. Matter of fact, to appease the Black community, somebody said they ended up building the commercial kitchen at the Power Center when Kirby John was building that as a way to try to get some street cred. But the fact that they're crying that they're being evicted and they're the victims, and if you all can see the money they've made and where it has helped them grow, the more you know, okay?
Charles, what are you hearing about this?
Literally the exact same thing. Pretty much all of that. I mean, it came up to, for me, I wasn't paying attention to it until Chris Pappas came and testified at City Council last week about it. And the way that it was initially laid out during that testimony made it seem as though this was a targeted attack on Pappas to get them out in favor of a international company, which is what they kept saying. They kept saying, international company, we need Houston grown, this, that, the other. And then, yeah, you look at the other side, and it's like she said, it's Through Good Coffee, it's Lucille's, and then of course there's like, I think a Starbucks in there because there has to be, but like most of these, and the Spot in Galveston, they're local companies. I mean, I don't understand this argument that it's all these international companies coming in. But the argument I think the city's making is that they didn't up the amount that they would give of their revenue share to the city, but I don't know. If you want to stay there that bad, you've made $500 million off of it, then why don't you up your revenue share? So I don't understand it. So I don't know. It's an interesting fight, to say the least.
It's called entitlement.
Okay, we're gonna keep an eye on it. I want to get a border update from Bob. What should we be watching? Because the Biden administration is saying, I think we've look at these numbers. What we've done appears to be slowing the tide of Venezuelans, Nicaraguans, etc.?
Okay, well, first off, I want to tease my interview with Governor Abbott that I did on Friday. I'll be putting that up on Breitbart later this afternoon. And part of what we discussed on that is exactly what you just said. The Biden administration is running around and touting because 1 month in the 24 months he's been in office, they had a decrease in migrant crossings and apprehensions coming across the border. Part of that is because of a program they created. However, it's a program they created illegally. It's not a program that was created and authorized by Congress. They took a immigration parole program that's supposed to be decided on a case by case basis. You look at somebody's individual case and see what their needs are. And yes, you can grant them parole to enter the United States legally. What they've done now is they've gone out and created an app. Where'd they get the money to create this app? Congress didn't approve it. They've created an app to let people, the Venezuelans, Cubans, and Nicaraguans, stay down there in Mexico or in their home countries and apply online for this parole program that's being granted on a blanket basis, $30,000 per month per country there to come into the United States. So that has had an immediate impact, not in the number of people coming in illegally or now legally through an illegal program, but by making it easier for them to come. And that's all Biden has done throughout his administration. He's not done anything to deter illegal mass migration, irregular migration into the United States. He's done everything to make it easier, to make it simpler. And so the governor's asking the legislature to raise another $4.6 billion to spend down there doing the job that the Biden administration refuses to do and is intentionally not doing. And so I asked him, what are we going to do? You know, why is it justified for the state of Texas to spend this kind of money? And the answer to that is they're saving lives. We're saving the lives of millions of Americans across this country who, with the despite the record amount of fentanyl is being seized by Border Patrol and U.S. Customs and Border Protection, the state of Texas, DPS troopers and National Guard have seized enough fentanyl to kill every man, woman, and child in the United States. Imagine had Texas not been doing this and all of that fentanyl was making its way into every city in this community, how many more deaths on top of the record number of deaths we have from fentanyl would be going on? But not only that, they're saving the lives of migrants. That, you know, you hear all this stuff from the left about the compassion and caring about these people. They don't care about them when they drown in the Rio Grande. They don't care about them when they die of thirst in the ranches in Brooks County, in Maverick County, and some of these other counties in West Texas. Where's the compassion in this illegal program that is funneling billions and billions of dollars into the narco-terrorist organizations, the criminal Mexican cartels? Where is the compassion in this? We've destroyed northern Mexico. We've destroyed much of Mexico because of the money that we're enabling them to make off of these drug cartels. And that is a crime against humanity.
Hey, I got a good report, Bob. You know, I got to give a shout out to our colleague, Michelle Maples, who's watching us tomorrow. I wish you could see that. Can you see that? Let's Vivian watch it up.
He's still in Germany.
Love you, Michelle. My best to the Colonel. Dr. Lita, here we are in almost March. I know that we're all kind of waiting to see if one Gilbert Garcia gets into the race. What are you hearing out there?
You know, there's just mums about it. You know, I keep asking and feeling, and some folks, some of my intel folks, I'm saying, hey, when is Gilbert jumping in? When he's jumping in? You know, he just mums about it. I don't know if he's waiting for a strategic moment, or he's holding off for, it's, the field grows bigger, or the fact that when Councilman Gallegos jumped in the race, he got a little cold feet. So. They're struggling to get endorsements from the heavy hitters in the Latino community. They're already, most of them are siding with Senator Whitmire. So, they may be rethinking this, but when he just jump in, which I think will be interesting, he's going to make a splash, and that'll just make the mayoral race a lot more interesting. But it's just really quiet about what he's going to do.
Yeah.
Did you know Gallegos was getting in the race?
I did not know. I did
I'm
not
gonna say,
know.
because that surprised me. I hadn't even
Yeah.
heard that on the streets and the rumor. I hadn't heard that anywhere. That one did shock me. It did.
Yeah.
Yeah, how big is it that Sylvia Garcia and Carol Alvarado have thrown their endorsements to Whitmire?
It's huge. I mean, you know, those are heavy hitters. These are folks that have been in, and you know, they're incumbents. They have high-ranking positions. They've been, you know, elected officials from their community for decades. Decades. So these folks are, it's yeah, that's a big telling point, you know, in terms of, you know, endorsements and support. You know, I like Gallegos a whole lot. He has an uphill battle. You know, let's just see where the chips fall. And in the end, you know, I'm wishing the best, but it's going to be tough as nails. You know, you just, you know, wish for the best, but you know who the front runners are, and mostly the folks that have the most money and have the most endorsements.
Okay,
And
finally, finally a little intel that Tomorrow brought me, but I find extremely interesting since we broke the Elevate strategy story.
Oh yeah.
The third and final former insider indicted on felony charges in the bid rigging scandal has left county government. Tomorrow confirmed that Wallace Nader is no longer a county employee. Alex Triantafilus, after a stint with the county administrator, apparently no longer a county employee. And the third fellow, Aaron Dunn, he was over at flood control. Is he also gone Tomorrow?
I'm not sure, but the Alex one, I want to say MIA for that one, because some people said he was gone, and then some people just said he has not been around. So that one, they don't know where he is. They said he took leave when he got to the office before for a family matter. But then they say he came back, and then they were like, he just been MIA. So some people said he's not there anymore, but I've not confirmed that. But the Wallace Nader, I definitely confirmed that one, that happened recently. And if you all watched Commissioner's Court on Tuesday, she seemed a little frazzled. She got into it with Adrian and told him to shut up. So
oh wow, I missed that. I missed that.
Yeah, she did. So yeah, I know that. I was also told, how can I forget to tell y'all this? This tea hot. This tea still hot. So you gotta blow your cup. Okay. I've heard that the cases involving corruption in local politics have been moved from the local FBI office to DC. Now, that was the rumor on the street.
Which the cases in Commissioner's Court or HISD? Which ones?
I was quoted. What they quoted to me was the local political corruption cases, because there's not just it's not just HISD. I mean, I know you all saw this longtime contractor who had been a contractor with the city and the county to the tune of over 190 million or 120 million.
I can't remember the exact number, but it's somewhere in that range for sure.
Yes, that they have he's been indicted on bribery scandal charges. It's I forgot the name of it. It's an engineering firm, but they're looking into heavily. And this is just this goes back, was it 10 years?
Yeah, I think
it was 10 years. Yeah, it was 10 years. But it was like 190 million or 120 million they made in government contracts. So there's multiple cases. Plus, you all know William Paul's time was delayed, his sentencing, and that usually only occurs when you've given them something else or they're still investigating what you've given them. And Rhonda Skilling Jones has not been, she's still not out. So they got their hands full looking into local politics. But the rumor on the street is that has been snatched from the local office. And they said it has something to do with the fact that the former leader now works for the county.
Hey, there's a rumor that Bob Price in his mobile home has a gun turret with a minigun. I don't know if it's true or not.
Don't tell anybody. That's a secret.
Yeah, I don't be giving his secrets out.
Hey,
And
everybody.
another interesting
Not to
local
mention
thing
the
really
twin 50 cals that on the exit ports at the rear in case I got tailgaters back there.
Go ahead, Charles.
There's another quick little interesting local thing. There's a petition going around now that is for ideally for the November ballot, a charter amendment petition to get the city of Houston to either renegotiate its terms for membership in Houston Galveston Area Council so that they get more of a share of a vote, or withdraw from Houston Galveston Area Council and form their own transportation policy council. I got stopped yesterday for them getting signatures, and so they're out there on the streets.
Wow. Okay. Hey, we're
Okay.
gonna leave
Wait,
it there.
hold on. I'm sorry. I'm the featured person in the article for Community News's next edition. So y'all keep a lookout for that.
And keep a lookout for Bob's one-on-one interview with Governor Abbott. It's out today. Dr. Lita.
Breitbart.com.
All right. Hey, thank you guys. You're my friends.
Yeah.
Have a good week.
Good show.
Cheers.
Good job. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you. Have a good week.